At 7 p.m., do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Costa, Vice Chair Burke. Dr. McGee, roll call.
Chairman Bourget,
Yes.
Vice Chair Burke.
Yes.
Mrs. Kepiscus.
Yes.
Mrs. Costa.
Yes.
Mr. Leclerc.
Yes. Next, I'll make a motion to seal closed session minutes of the February 8th, 2023 closed meeting. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Costa, Dr. McGee.
Chairman Bourget,
Yes.
Vice Chair Burke. Yes. Mrs. Kepiscus.
Yes.
Mrs. Costa.
Yes.
Mr. Leclerc.
Yes. Will you please stand and join me for a moment of silence and pledge of allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'd like to report from our closed session meeting that on a 5-0 vote, the school committee approved the superintendent's recommendation to not remove certain probationary teachers. Next, we're going to bidding welfare. Is there anyone who wants to address the school committee? Please come forward to the mic, state your name and address, and keep your comments in good decorum, and have 5 minutes. Anyone? Good. You gotta come up to the mic. Go right to the mic.
Good evening. I appreciate you taking this time just to hear my concerns as a concerned parent.
Would you please state your name and address, please?
Sure, it's Kim Dalton. And I'm just addressing the bullying that's been going on at the school. I have went through every level of command that I have been able to reach at this point, and I'm just trying to find a resolution to my daughter who has an active IEP. I've gone through the school directly, I've gone to Dr. McGee, and as of last Friday, it actually escalated even further with this child's parent when I was in Walmart with my toddler. I have since filed a police report. Up until this point, I've never even met the mom. I've never had a single conversation with her. I just have documentation that this other student has been bullying my child. I know that that term is used lightly, but in this instance, this has been going on since October. We're now in February, and it's daily harassment where my daughter is hypervigilant, overstimulated. She comes home from school, and she just wants to go to sleep. And it's not fair to her. It's not fair to all the rest of the kids that are experiencing this. And I think that as a parent, as a concerned citizen, I'm hoping that I understand that, everyone's hands are tied and we're trying the best that we can, but something has to be done. It's not fair to the kids that are victim of this. And, the gentleman who had addressed the other committee earlier in terms of what happens I believe it was the principal of the high school. What happens if a particular student is, the one being bullied, and then after 3 to 5 weeks, they become the offender? Then what happens? Well, that instance was my child. My daughter has never been a behavioral child. She's never been in trouble with the law. She's never had any disorderly conduct or any behavioral type of issues in school whatsoever since she put foot into the Villanova Middle School. It's been a nightmare, and I'm trying to figure out best course of action and in hopes to not lose my daughter in the midst of it all. She essentially started off again, this has been going on for 3 months. Last month, it was the weekend before Martin Luther King, she went to 3 adults on this day in which the incident had occurred. And this bully traveled my daughter from class to class to class. And every single class, my daughter went to an adult. And then by the time that the cafeteria came and school had came, the lunchtime came, my daughter had enough. And she attacked the girl. She absolutely did. She pulled her by the back of her hair. She took her off the table and started punching her in her face because she's had enough. And then in return, my daughter was reprimanded for it. She was suspended for several days. I had no communication with the school, no update on email, and it wasn't until I contacted the school on that Friday asking for an update. They put a safety plan in place for my daughter on January 20th. And the other student had remained in every one of my daughter's classes except I Explore. I'm sorry for getting emotional, but this is enough. I was in Walmart with my 2-year-old, and the mom went to go put her hair up to go attack me. And my daughter says, "Mom, turn around." And I have to get into defense mode and make sure that my daughter's behind me and my other toddler is on the side of me to a woman that I've never seen before. I have the police report with me, if you guys would like to see it. I asked the police officer in Smithfield if we could pull the video and making sure, because again, my daughter's being charged for attacking the girl. And my story collaborates with what I told the officer in terms of exactly what happened in the video. And I didn't know what else to do. Because now my daughter, not only is my daughter on defense mode going into school, which that's not fair to her. She has an active IEP and she hasn't been getting her services. Like, how is this fair to my daughter? And then in return, she's going to fail all her classes, and then the end result is her going to summer school or her repeating 6th grade. Again, how is this fair to her? We have to have a solution. I understand that you guys can't expel children, but there has to be an alternative. I have provided email correspondences. I have done my due diligence as a parent. I won't say that my daughter was perfect. She's 12 years old and she's learning. And she will be held accountable for those decisions and those mistakes that she's made. But this incident in particular is not okay. And it's been ongoing for way too long. So I just want to address the school committee so that all of you guys are aware, because again, I don't know next time if I go to Walmart and I see this mom, like, what's going to happen? If I'm picking my daughter up in school in the afternoon and the mom's parked across the street from me, I don't know what's going to happen. And how is that fair to me and my child? It's not. So I just ask that if there is something that can be done to please make it happen. My daughter deserves to be in a safe and nurturing living environment. All children do, not just my daughter. All children do. But I'm speaking on behalf of my daughter who has an active IEP and has not been able to receive her services because I am scared to send her to school. And I appreciate you guys taking the time to listen to me. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone else want to address the school committee? And none, we're going to recognitions and announcements, and we do not have any tonight.
Not this evening.
Then let's go into the approval of minutes, and I'll make a motion to approve the January 11, 2023 closed session minutes. Do we have a second? Second by Mrs. Costa. Dr. McGee.
Chairman Bourget?
Yes.
Vice Chair Burke?
Yes.
Mrs. Kepiscus?
Yes.
Mrs. Costa?
Yes.
Mr. Leclerc?
Yes. Next, I'll make a motion to approve the January 11, 2023 open meeting minutes. Do we have a second? Second by Mrs. Costa. Dr. McGee.
Chairman Bourget?
Yes.
Vice Chair Burke? Yes. Mrs. Kepiscus?
Yes.
Mrs. Costa?
Yes.
Mr. Leclerc?
Yes. Next, we'll go into the consent agenda. I'll make a motion to approve and discuss the consent agenda. Do we have a second? Second by Mrs. Costa. Does any school committee member have any questions, comments, or want to take anything out of the consent agenda? Dr. McGee?
Chairman Bourget?
Yes.
Vice Chair Burke? Yes. Mrs. Kepiscus?
Yes.
Mrs. Costa?
Yes.
Mr. Leclerc? Yes.
Dr. McGee, your superintendent's report, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the committee has my personnel appointments and changes. It's actually dated January 25th. This comes from the previous meeting, which had to be canceled due to the weather. Nothing has changed since then. I'll just bring to your attention, we had 3 non-certified positions that are filled. One is a personal care teacher assistant, or PCA, at Harris Elementary. Another is a school secretary, 10-month at Harris Elementary, and the third is a school secretary, 10-month at the Career Center. There are also some additional, we have some retirements here in the district. We have teachers Diane Askar, Sue Lanois, Pam Page, and Catherine Palmieri, who are retiring at the end of this year. We will certainly recognize them and the other retirees as we come to the close of the school year, but I just want to, as they're on this list, I want to just formally thank them for the years of service. They've all been 33, 32 plus years in the Woonsocket Education Department, some of which, when I started teaching in the district, I started with them. So I just want to thank them for their dedication and commitment to the community and the district and our students. We have some separations here as well. Some teachers who have left the district, we have 3, and then we have 1 transfer. With that concludes the personnel appointments and changes. The second agenda item I have is the anti-bullying update, and as the chairman noted, we had a workshop late this afternoon at 5:30 with all of our secondary principals and assistant principals. During that workshop, we administrators discussed again the measures that they have taken and take during the school year. As you're all aware, as the community might be aware, in the beginning of the school year, the principals, based on our anti-bullying policy, are to present to me a calendar of anti-bullying activities, different types of events that each school has to promote kindness, to promote respect and treating one another respectfully, and which that information I've shared with the school committee in the beginning of the school year. We talked a little bit about that. We also talked about the fact that our principals and assistant principals and deans of students and our behavior interventionists work tirelessly every day trying to help avoid situations. Do they catch everything? No, they don't. They do their best. They put an inordinate amount of time in, bless you, during the day to try to provide a safe environment. They also talked about some of the consequences that students who bully and students who maybe aren't bullying, but are having issues with one another that may lead to a fight. They talked about that process and what they follow. It can be anywhere from a conversation with a student or a family member, a parent, to a suspension. We also talked about, Mrs. Kapiskis asked the question whether or not we can expel students. We cannot expel students. There's a process we have to follow in some situations where a student may be removed from the educational setting for up to 45 days, where there are a variety of assessments that are done. And in some instances, the student returns. In other instances, the student may remain in that out-of-district placement that they have been sent to. And that's not a decision, by the way, that I make. That's a decision that the evaluation team makes. So students that have IEPs, when they are sent out of district, the misnomer is that I can make that decision. I legally cannot make that decision. That is an evaluation team decision. So I thought it was a good, eye-opening, enlightening conversation. We're not perfect here. We don't pretend to be. There are instances, there are situations that happen. But I can tell you that our administrators work very hard to try to maintain the safety of all of our students. And with that, Mr. Chairman, that concludes my report. I'd be happy to answer any questions that the committee may have at this time.
Any questions or comments for Dr. McGee? Nope. Then I'll make a motion to receive and place on file the superintendent's report. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Costa. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Next, we're going to the school committee reports, and first we'll begin with the CELAC update. Mrs. Kapiskis, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The CELAC met on Thursday, February 2nd, 2023 at 6 p.m. virtually. It discussed an old business. We discussed middle graduation requirements. It's kept as an item on our agenda because we're still looking for guidance from RIDE with regard to how special education students will be handled. There's a special meeting scheduled for February 10th among the special education directors to discuss exactly how to support students with IEP, so she hopes to have more information for us shortly. And this item will be carried on our March agenda. As usual, I made my plea or pitch as acting chair to have someone else assume the leadership of the CLAC. Under new business that we talked about, we only had a new business we talked about was bullying and discipline. Discussed a lot of the same things that were discussed here tonight. Ms. Luca was present, Ms. Benegalva was present virtually. The only thing that I can think of that I had in my notes that we discussed there that we didn't discuss here was informal removals, because that seems to be something that happens, or at least with my son as a student with an IEP, he had a lot of informal removals, which is basically you ask the child, you call the parent in, have a discussion about the child's behavior, and strongly suggest to the parent that they take the child home. And OSEP, the Federal Office for Special Education, has ruled that is a suspension, an out-of-school suspension. That's an informal removal, and as a result, that needs to be documented as an out-of-school suspension. And I just asked whether or not that was being done, because I know, oh my God, years ago when my son was in second grade, he just graduated from college, that wasn't being done. But that's what we talked about, the consequences, that it's toughest at the middle school. We talked about when the suspension is appropriate, when it's not appropriate, and with various discussions that we had tonight. And in particular, it's the usual problem. We have repeat offenders. It's a certain core group of students that raise the problems in most of the schools. In comments from Dr. McGee, who told us the development of the district's strategic plan was underway, with most focus groups having already met, and 2 scheduled to be this week, which occurred on Monday. The plan will be completed and before the school committee for review by its meeting at the end of May. The stage 2 building application is due to write on February 15th and will be presented on time. Building committee will approve, school committee will approve hopefully on February 8th, and it will go to the city council for approval. That he was very optimistic about the results of that. This is the money stage. Stage 3 is where the actual building plans and development come into play. From Ms. Morel, Mr. Wright has worked with RIPEN, and RIPEN will be presenting workshops in our district. The first will be a 504 workshop, which will be presented virtually in English on March 7th at 6 p.m. and in Spanish on April 4th at 6 p.m. She will share more scheduled workshops with parents through the superintendent's newsletter to families. We're also currently working on scheduling a CEDAR overview. She's working with the Autism Project to bring training workshops into the district for both parents and staff, as the summer programs with staff were very well received. Resource teachers K through 12 will have an opportunity to receive a 3-day training on reading. The SIP will have presentations for the following coming months. In March, Carrie Collins and CCRI will present on transition and disability services available at CCRI, with hopefully some CCR students joining as a focus group. In April, a presentation by the Autism Project, and in May, DCYF will present with a program overview. Our next meeting is on March 2nd, 2023 at 6 p.m. virtually. The meeting was adjourned after an hour. Attendance was pretty good. We had about 17 attendees, of which I think 3 were parents, most were staff.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Kapiskas. Any questions, comments for her?
Keep being the best chairwoman.
Well, no.
I'll make a motion to receive and place on file the CLAC update. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Costa. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Next, we'll go into curriculum. Mrs. Kapiskas.
Would you like me to do it, Mr. Berger?
All you.
Curriculum subcommittee on January 17th, 2023 at 3 p.m. After approving our minutes, we had a discussion of the dynamic learning math DLM assessment of student performance.
Bless you.
Ms. Morel provided a review of the DLM, advising that this is the alternate assessment given to students with intellectual and other disabilities who are unable to take the YCAS assessment. Determination of eligibility is based upon an evaluation form created by RIDE but tweaked by the WBD, which is based on student performance both at home and in school, evaluations, and other relevant information. Mr. Berger shifted the focus from DLM to YCAS, asking the administrators present, Dr. Hoods, Ms. Dorizo, Ms. Morel, Ms. Aguia, in particular, if it's possible to identify the test results for individual students so as to identify them among the students who might fit into certain categories, so as to see how each different category does, I believe, in terms of statewide testing. He has advised that this is possible. He then asks if it is possible to look at the scores of students The students left who are not in any of these categories, the normal gen ed students, so to speak. This is how they fare on the RICAS. Ms. Teresa advised that is not possible. It's not possible to do what he appears to want done. Each test would have to be individually looked at, and there are over 2,000 students. The chair argued against this undertaking as it demonstrates nothing and sets up possible discrimination against students who do fit into the categories and are equally entitled to an education under both state and federal law. Of that issue, as a result, there's no further discussion of that issue. Discussion of assessing comprehension and communication in English state to state for English language learners, or access. This is the acronym for WIDA, which is the test used to determine growth in the English language for our MLL students. Once certain growth is achieved, our students exit the MLL program and MLL services will terminate for them. Ms. Aguirre provided documentation as to what the WIDA test and the tests and the growth that must be shown to move from level to level until students can exit MLL services. She also provided an example of the report that is sent home to parents in their native language explaining their child's results. A new wrinkle in MLL is that many of our students now come to our schools with no English and no proficiency in their own language due to interrupted or inconsistent education in their home countries. Also, many students come from school systems which follow the January to December calendar and come to us having exited a prior grade in December, but having been placed in that same grade for the balance of our school year, which runs from September to June. Students who take the WIDA must take the math portion of the RICAS during their first year in district, and that RICAS translates to Spanish only. Beginning with their arrival year, but test only in the ELA portion of the RICAS after they have completed 1 year in our system and our MLL program. We also have alternative assessment students in our MLL program who also stood for the Access WIDA Pro testing, but not the RICAS. I'm assuming I meant GML, I apologize. WED follows growth and proficiency standards for WIDA for these students. When there was a discussion of the two-way dual language programming, WIDA is looking for districts with a high number of MLL students to offer dual language curriculum so instruction is given in both English and typically Spanish. We currently have a preschool room running a dual language program, but the intent of the curriculum is to open more rooms each year as these students move up. One room teaching English and another room teaching Spanish. In English and in Spanish, excuse me. It was noted that approximately 80% of our MLL students are Spanish speakers. This is still in the planning stages, and WED plans to review programs in place at other schools. In Worcester, for example, staffing will be difficult as the teacher truly needs to be bilingual and biliterate, as well as certified at the appropriate education level. We are collaborating with URI and WIC to seek out future staff from their student body. We're in discussion of the elementary ELA curriculum pilot. WED has been using Ready Gen curriculum in our schools for at least 5 years, but as the state has shifted to a structured literacy form of ELA, in which the WED currently has 300 plus staff trained, we need to look at new ELA curriculum as Ready Gen does not incorporate structured literacy in its curriculum. Ms. Rizzo and other administrators spoke highly of the shift to structured literacy as it is a way of learning how to read which makes much more sense for all students, not just those with dyslexia or other learning disabilities. It recognizes that not all students learn to read the same way, and structured literacy focuses on learning sounds first before moving on to letters, etc. It is more systematic reading instruction. In reviewing elementary ELA curricula, we are looking for curricula which use structured literacy but can be adapted to meet the needs of students with IEPs and MLL students. We are currently piloting 2 curricula which may suit our needs in accordance with our demographics. We are in the early investigation stages, and this issue will return to our curriculum agenda when the administration is ready to recommend a particular curriculum be purchased. We had an item listed for discussion of the Woonsocket High School Social Studies programming. That item was removed from the agenda at the request of the administration. It will likely be discussed at our next meeting. The next curriculum subcommittee meeting is on Monday, February 27th, 2023 at 3 p.m. at the Woonsocket Middle School at Hamlet Room 124. The meeting adjourned at 4 p.m.
Thank you, Mrs. Kapiskas. Any questions, comments for her? I'll make a motion to receive and place on file the curriculum update. Do you have a second? Second. Second by Mrs. Costa. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Next, we will go into the policy update. I will turn it over to Vice Chair Burke and Mrs. Kapiskas. let's just take a breather for a second.
I'm trying to find my, there they are. That's some of the policy notes.
Are we taking a breather?
I have kind of.
I think you should go for the hat trick.
That trick, I love it. Deep breath. The policy subcommittee met on February 7th, which was yesterday, 4 p.m. After approving the minutes to our prior meeting with some amendments, we began with a discussion or approval of the drug smoke-free school policy. Per Mr. Burke, he has at Woonsocket, Roxton Valley Prevention Coalition meeting on Wednesday, that would have been today, for feedback on our draft policy. There are still issues around the term student assistance counselor as used in the sanctions portions of the policy. The person at the high school and middle school called the school adjustment counselor, but this person is more of a behavioral interventionist and not a DOD employee or a contracted person. There was discussion of whether this person could be the student assistance counselor referred to in the sanctions, could be the school nurse, school psychologist, or social worker, perhaps someone the principal at each school would designate. There's also a discussion of whether the sanction should be in the policy at all, or whether they are more appropriate to be in protocols instead. There was further discussion of whether the sanctions as drafted are even enforceable. At present, per Mr. Drew at the high school, current sanctions are confiscation of the material, discussion and to detention, to ISS and the facts program, depending on the circumstances and the student. In light of the need for different sanctions based on the age of the student involved, Dr. McGee indicated that he would raise this issue with the principal at the principal's meetings to feel out what they thought the appropriate sanctions would be at each educational level. The policy looks to shift away from punitive sanctions to educational sanctions. As a result of these discussions, the policy will be held until our next subcommittee meeting. The next policy was the non-fraternization policy. While discussing, it became clear that a laundry list of prohibited acts contained in the policy would cause for concern among the WD employees present, educators, administrators, directors, and superintendent, and one particular retired educator. In particular, number 2 mentioned the appropriateness of staff calling students directly outside of school. The question was raised, what about coaches who have to call to advise a practice or a game is canceled? Number 3 discusses meeting up with students outside of school. This may be impossible to avoid if students live in Woonsocket, especially if they have children who attend school here. For example, a staff member's children who invite school friends over for a sleepover. Number 4, staff should not discuss their personal lives with or around students. Per Caroline and Nikki, this is directed against staff who might discuss their weekend shenanigans in an area where students might hear them. However, Mr. Burke and others expressed concern that educators often use tales from their own life experiences as part of their instruction in the classroom, and that would be prohibited. Number 6, bans in place from giving gifts to students, and we all know and recognize that we have many kind-hearted staff who purchase clothes for our students, even though spare clothes are available in the nurse's office. In short, it is impossible to legislate the nuances of what an appropriate relationship with any particular child or their family might be. Upon motion of Dr. McGee and second of Sue Rizzo, the policy was removed from further consideration over the objection of Nikki Dargan. Policy for education of students experiencing homelessness. The policy as drafted is language directly from the federal law and cannot really be altered. It is much shorter than our prior policy, and much more reader-friendly, but still hits the necessary points. With one minor change, moving the identification of the contact person in our district to the beginning of the document as opposed to the end. The policy was approved by motion from Mr. Burke and second from me to move forward to the full school committee for passage and will be on our next agenda. Then there were a laundry list of old policy manual policies that they are recommended to be rescinded or updated. I'll spare you the list, but essentially we recommended that all of them be rescinded or removed because they, for the most part, been superseded by federal law, state law, or another policy we enacted. And when we hit that item on the agenda, I'll go through those in more detail for you in the next meeting. However, the committee agreed to send the recommendation to rescind and remove through to the next school committee meetings that will be on the next agenda. Because we have 2 things going forward that can be placed because we limit 3 policies per meeting. And the reason why is because our meetings last 2 hours anyway. We added 2 policies to the next to-do list. And those policies, the field trip policy and the anti-hazing policy, on the recommendation of council and Dr. McGee. Our next meeting is scheduled for Thursday, March 23rd, 2023 at 4 p.m. here at the Hamlet Middle School, room 124. We adjourned at 5:59 on my motion, and a second from Mr. Burke, and that concludes my report.
Good hat trick, Mrs. Augustus.
We really feel like we were just there. We were there.
I know I was there. We were all there. Any questions, comments for Mrs. Kapiskas or Vice Chair? Can I make a motion to receive and place on file the policy update? Do we have a second? Second. Second by Mrs. Costa. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. We have one item in unfinished business. Are we ready to discuss? We're good to go. So this has been tabled, so I'll make a motion to remove bid 2306 Community Solar from the table. Do we have a second? Second. Second by Mrs. Costa. Dr. McGee, roll call.
Chairman Bourget,
Yes.
Vice Chair Burke.
Yes.
Mrs. Kapiskas.
Yes.
Mrs. Costa.
Yes.
Mr. Leclerc.
Yes. Now I'll make a motion to discuss and approve bid 23-06 Community Solar. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second, Vice Chair Burke and Mrs. Costa. Mr. Perrier, finally.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, school committee, as we work through this community solar project. It was a little more intensive than we thought it was going to be. That's why we had it in front of you a few times when we didn't quite have the contract where we wanted it. So we were set to go to last school committee on this. We worked probably for a good month. Ms. Rappaport was not here tonight, and myself with the lawyers of next amp, and we were able to reach an agreement that everybody felt comfortable with. So again, to recap what we're doing here with this community solar project, currently in Warren, a solar farm is already under construction. They admitted this to us on the phone that they were already in the construction process, even though they didn't have a contract yet. I think that kind of shows you how confident they were that if this does fall through and you do not approve it tonight, that they were able to find somebody to take advantage of these savings. Basically what's happening here is that solar farm is being built, and we are going to basically receive 88.7% of the energy that's brought in from that solar farm. It's going to go into the grid, and we're not going to get it directly, but it will be fed back into the grid, and it will be used elsewhere across the state. Basically, that savings that now we're going to be creating, 45% of that savings is going to be kept by us. So we're going to get all the credits back on that, and then we'll pay 55% of those savings to NextAmp, but we're going to keep 45% of the savings. Now, this is quite a long agreement. It's a 20-year agreement, which does seem long, but if you look around, and the vendor who did the bid for us shared some other bids that they did in other states, and in Massachusetts in particular, the last bid that they did, they were receiving between 10 and 15% rebates as opposed to the 45 that we're getting here. And I think that can be chalked up to all the initiatives that Rhode Island is currently undergoing to really become a green energy state. So these vendors really, I think this is a perfect time for us to get into a long-term agreement. I don't think we're going to see savings like this anytime during my tenure here as we move forward. So I present to you the community solar agreement, and I'd like to answer any questions that anybody has.
Anyone? Dr. McGee?
Chairman Bourget,
Yes.
Vice Chair Burke. Yes. Mrs. Kapiskas.
Yes.
Mrs. Costa.
Yes.
Mr. Leclerc.
Yes.
Thank you for your patience on this one.
Finally, good job. New business. We've already taken this vote, but it's on our agenda, so we're going to do it again. Dr. McGee, roll call vote for the recommendation not to renew certain probationary teachers.
Chairman Bourget.
Yes.
Vice Chair Burke. Yes. Mrs. Kapiskas.
Yes.
Mrs. Costa.
Yes.
Mr. Leclerc.
Yes. Next item is I'll make a motion to discuss and approve the elementary and middle school area assignment policy for first passage. Do we have a second? Second. Second by Mrs. Costa. Do I turn it over to you?
Yes. The administration requested this policy. It has to do mainly with when we move students from community school, and whether the students remain there for the balance of their education, whether they get moved back to their home school, what governs that. Essentially, the determination was made that we needed a policy because the concern was that they want things applied inconsistently. We wanted there to be a framework for how these decisions were made, particularly with regard to whether or not a student moves to another school or remains in the school they were assigned to, or whether they move back to their home school. And we want to be able to have more control over the shifting. Parents can still request that their children remain in the school they were placed in due to overflow issues, or for example, but that isn't a guarantee that they're going to remain there. But we recognize that the consistency of remaining in the same school is important if we can accomplish it and if parents want that. And that's essentially what this policy is about. But one important thing that we added, because we realized our policies didn't really require it, this seemed to be the best place to put it, because this has been an ongoing issue, that parents must advise the WED if their students move for change of address, because sometimes parents will not reveal that information in order to keep their kids in the school they're in. We want them to reveal that information because we need it for informational purposes in case of an emergency. We want them to not be afraid that their children will be automatically moved out of the school they're in, because there is some provision in this policy to allow them to remain for consistency.
As I read the policy, it allows for the list of schools. In other words, if our schools change, like we've got major construction that's going to be happening in the next few years, and we may be eliminating some schools, the policy will still apply to the schools, I assume, that we can do this.
It should. The only thing I can imagine is we may need to amend it to change the names of the schools, because if certain schools are dropping out in favor of another name, we would switch that.
So it'll be a matter of an amendment.
Very quick amendment.
Anyone else? Dr. McGee?
Chairman Bourget,
Yes.
Vice Chair Burke?
Yes.
Mrs. Kepiscus?
Yes.
Mrs. Costa?
Yes.
Mr. Leclerc? Yes.
Next, I'll make a motion to discuss and approve to rescind/retire certain sections of the old Woonsocket School Committee Policy Manual, specifically the P3-7, P3-8, and P3-9 series. Is there a second? Second. Second by Mrs. Costa. Megan? We're scoring a lot of points tonight.
Unbelievable. I think we should give you stipends.
This is essentially part of our review of our overall policy manual to clean it up, something that was actually begun during my first term in school committee, and hopefully we'll get it finished during this term. What we're looking at is particular section P3, subparts 7 through 9. They deal with such things as library content, media center content, arts and crafts supplies, physical education supplies, music department supplies, instructional services, speech therapy, reading programs, tutoring, home instruction, education of students experiencing homelessness, the very long homeless policy that we previously had and just are looking to replace. We'll be doing that at the next meeting. I'm still trying through the homeless policy. Resolution of disputes, training for students and for staff, coordination of students who are homeless or identified as experiencing homelessness, a section called values and character education, and curriculum. And essentially these are all superseded by either state statute, federal statute, or another policy that we've enacted or have under review. And this would conclude section P3 of our policy. The recommendation is to remove or rescind all of these existing policies in favor of the newly adopted policies or in favor of them being superseded by federal or state law.
Having looked at this and read over, I agree with that. These are old, antiquated, and have been replaced, and it's a good time to get rid of them. Any other folks?
Mr. Chairman, just a question that I'll return on your answer. We're going to rescind the policy on students experiencing homelessness. We created a new policy yesterday
We have not approved it yet on the school committee. Is there a concern? Or is state law governs it anyway? We're going to rescind this homelessness policy of one of these.
No, it's okay to have a gap between rescinding the old policy and adopting the new.
Okay. Yes. Dr. McGee?
Chairman Bourget?
Yes.
Vice Chair Burke?
Yes.
Mrs. Kepiscus?
Yes.
Mrs. Costa?
Yes.
Mr. Leclerc?
Yes. This next item I'm very excited about because our guests are here to discuss the WED Stage 2 submission. So I'll make a motion to discuss and approve the school department's Stage 2 submission to RIDE. Do we have a second? Second. Second by Mr. Leclerc and Mrs. Costa. Dr. McGee.
I've been waiting for this for a long time.
We all.
So this is a very exciting evening here. As you just stated, Mr. Chairman, we're looking for the committee to approve the Stage 2 necessity of school construction application for the WED. As the committee is aware, there are a total of 5 stages. We've completed Stage 1, Stage 2. There'll be a presentation in a few moments here, but I just want to kind of frame where we are and what you're going to, some of what you're going to see during this presentation. So as I said, there are 5 stages. This is stage number 2. We're going to be presenting, once the committee approves this, we'll be presenting our proposal to the Rhode Island Department of Education on February 15th. As part of our proposals, we have various priorities. Priority 1 is what you're going to see here this evening. We have some gentlemen from Toronto Architects and Levy Architects here as well to go over that. We have a priority 2, which is not going to be actually included, and we have a priority 3. However, we're hopeful that over the next few years, we'll get to priority 2 and priority 3. But priority 1, just to give you an overview, includes the following: a new elementary school, the construction of a new elementary school, which the cost is approximately $81 million. The addition at Governor Pothier Elementary School of Citizens Memorial. So Citizens Memorial would be taken down and an addition would be added. That's at $26,400,000. The middle schools, because our new elementary school would be pre-K through grade 4, grade 5, all of our elementary school grade 5 students would be coming to Hamlet Middle School, and we would have a 5-6 upper elementary school, and then Hamlet Elementary School would be a grade 7 and 8 middle school. Villanova would be a grade 8, 7, 8 middle school, yes. And in addition to that, there would be some repairs at Harris Elementary School, primarily roof repairs, and also that's $3 million. And then district-wide security, which would be approximately $5 million, and that would be upgrading a variety of safety, things from doors to windows to alarm upgrades. So that total is $125 million. So this is what's going to be submitted to the Department of Education on February 15th. I want to introduce to you some gentlemen who are here this evening. And
Before you do that, Dr. McGee, the one thing I just want to emphasize, by February 15th, once we approve Stage 2, the City Council has a meeting on the 20th, and it's okay that 5-day gap. They will get to the same presentation, and they have to approve it as well. Because RIDE requires both school committee and city council approvals. Right now, the building committee that's been working on this project for a long time, we've approved it, so it's not before us. I'll just make another comment. I know the answer, but I don't think you said it in the description. Where is the $125 million coming from?
So that would come from the state. Okay. That's part of the bond the referendum rather, that was passed back in November.
Mr. Perry, it looks like you want to jump right in.
94% of that is going to be covered by the state. We're still working through exactly the mechanics on the reimbursement. At the end of the day, we were responsible for 6% after factoring in the savings that we're going to get through consolidation of schools, as well as energy savings that we're going to create credits for. So basically, the district will be responsible for only 6% of the entire purchase price.
Thank you. So before we start the presentation and before I introduce the gentlemen that are here this evening, I want to thank the building committee. I want to thank the Woonsocket Education Department directors and all of those who are both on the building committee and who have been working with our architects feverishly, really, for the last 3 months. This plan, this stage 2 or phase 2 plan, normally takes up to a year. And we've worked with the WED staff, the building committee, and the architects, and really in about 3.5 months, we're ready for our stage 2 proposal. So I want to thank everyone for their hard work and their commitment and dedication. And I'm going to introduce some gentlemen here, and then we can start the presentation. First, I want to introduce Mr. Louis Tirado of Tirado Architects. I also want to introduce Mr. Robert Stack of Tirado Architects, Mr. Jonathan Levy of Jonathan Levy Architects, and Mr. David Shostinian from City Point Partners. It has been an absolute pleasure working with everyone so far, and I am confident that as we get through stage 2 and we make that proposal, and we get into stage 3 and stage 4 and stage 5, that we're going to do some really, really exciting work together. This is a really exciting time for the city of Woonsocket and for the kids of Woonsocket. And I couldn't be more thrilled. So without further ado,
Yes.
I think
What individual that wasn't mentioned?
yes, thank you.
Everybody should have.
So we're going to go out there, and there's going to be a presentation. So, Louis, did you want to start, or Jonathan, or?
So we come down?
Okay, so we'll come down there?
Yes.
Okay.
Just know the lights will come on.
Thank you, Alan.
Yes, it was.
Should we start? You gotta wait for the screen.
Everybody stays close to right to go home.
Thank you, Mr. Costa. Okay, thank you. I will start by thanking you, the chair, and the school committee. It's been a wonderful experience working with you. Amazing collaboration, timely decisions from the superintendent and the school administration. You have done school projects in every district in Rhode Island except for two. And I can tell you that you have something really special here in Woonsocket. It's been a great pleasure to work with you. We're excited to share the stage tour with you. There's a lot of information, so we're going to go through it fairly quick. We can get into any details that you want to revisit as we move forward. We're going to start with Robert, the Vice President of our firm, who's going to go through the demographics and how your school accommodates for the students that are expected.
Luckily, I know these trends by heart. But the first chart summarizes the number of tracks throughout the district. And a track equals a classroom, so the number of classrooms you need in order to teach the number of children that you have. So it starts with the left with the number of classrooms you currently have. The middle is the number of classrooms you will need for the projected population that's going to happen in 5 years. And all the way to the right is the number of tracks that we are proposing in the stage 2, which is fairly consistent. We just, even without a little, you get a few extra classrooms in case there's an unexpected population growth. The second chart summarizes the first chart would summarize how many classrooms you have per grade. This summarizes how many classrooms you have per grade per existing building. And then the next chart is what we're proposing. So you see with the first 3 schools, Vernon, Grove, and Coleman, there's 3 tracks, 2 tracks, and 3 tracks. So if we were to replace them with one new elementary school combined, it would be an 8-track school. And the same thing with the number of classrooms from citizens. A track is basically a classroom. So in other words, contractually, you can only have certain X amount of kids per classroom. And then you take the population of the kids in that grade, so how many 5th graders there are throughout the whole district, divided by how many can go into each classroom, then you have the number of classrooms. They call it a track because ideally the same kids will move forward. So in other words, if you start out with 3 first grades, you'll have 3 second grades, 3 third grades, 2 fourth grades. So here we took all the existing buildings and we did what we call test fits. And that is just to make sure that you have the right number of classrooms in each building to fit the number of classrooms that you need. Now, as Dr. McGee so already summarized, the idea is to move the 5th grade over to Hamlet for an upper elementary. So by taking the 5th grade out of some of these existing buildings, it frees up some classrooms. That enables us to introduce 21st century spaces, such as learning commons, group learning rooms, Da Vinci rooms, where they can do art and maker spaces and whatnot. This is the existing building at Beverly Parkland, which is a 6-track school. Each color is a different grade, so the existing building would have kindergarten, 1st grade, and 2nd grade, and in addition, we get pre-K, 3rd and 4th. This is Harris, and again, this will be a K through 4. It's a 3-track school. Each color is a different grade. This is Savoy, K through 4, 3-track school. This is the upper elementary here at Hamilton. So this is the entire 5th and 6th for the whole district. The pink is the 6th, the purple is the 5th. And they're organized in houses, and then the old spaces in the middle, and the 21st century learning spaces, which are learning commons, Da Vinci rooms where they can do a lot of group-based project work. And finally, this is really known middle school, which will have all of the 7th and 8th grade grouped in houses, each with a science classroom and 5 classrooms, including one lab, and then one large 25th century sort of group learning space that they would all share. And now I'm going to turn it over to Lewis, and he's going to go into more detail about the proposed addition at Penfield.
Thank you. So, excuse me about, so this is kind of an aerial view of the Norman Apothecary school. The existing school is located here. This is the kindergarten entrance, and this is the main entrance to the school. The proposed addition will be located here. The existing Citizens Elementary School is about here. So we're proposing a 3-story addition because that would accommodate the construction of the addition without interfering with the Citizens Elementary School remaining in operation. That saves you a lot of time and money because you don't need to have a swing space to put the students in when this is being built. So we extend the circulation patterns around the building. We have existing ingress points and entrance points. We create a new pre-K drop over in here, visitors and faculty parking, and then we have the playgrounds for the elementary school. This is an overall plan of the whole school. The existing entrance is located here. As you can see, there's a main corridor and 2 main cross corridors leading into the classroom wings. What we're proposing is an extension of those circulation patterns so that this corridor will be extended and will connect the new addition. So the most economical way to design and build a classroom is a 3-story building. So you see that here, and you also see that by the Battlefield School. Then when you have large spaces like this one, the most economical way is to put them on slab with nothing above it. So we expand the existing cafeteria, which is located here, by adding a new cafeteria here at the same level, and also an expansion of the gymnasium here. This is the existing gym, and that's a connection. So, as Robert mentioned, we call these houses, and each house is a small learning community. So, a grade house. This is the lower level, the ground level of the addition. The main entrance to it will be located here from the vestibule, and the stair connects all 3 floors. We have the pre-K rooms arranged around the center space. Within a house, we also provide restrooms, breakout rooms for small group learning, a teacher's plan room, which will locate close to the entrance for control. We also have an office and a special ed room. This floor also has an OTPT room, and this is the DaVinci room for this house. So the second floor of the addition lights up the level with the existing first floor of the building. So this is the existing building, the main corridor, also located here, the kitchen's here, and there's a 4-foot difference in elevation to accommodate the level below. So you would connect through this corridor, ADA access is provided through an elevator here, that will enter up the lower floor here, and exit up the upper level here. This arrangement is pretty typical throughout, so that you have the 3rd grade classrooms with breakout rooms, and also the individual restrooms. You have the teacher plan room, the connecting stair, and the special ed room. You have a DaVinci room
here that's really part of the whole pivot to addition. You're going to see a little bit more on that in a minute. So it's really important to provide natural light to this center space, which is the learning commons. It's a space where you can have multiple classes working together. You can have presentations and additional breakout groups. At the pre-K level, we also have the media center located at that level. And this is the upper level, similar to the spaces below. What you see here is a light shaft, so it's very important to provide natural light to the center spaces. So there's a skylight above this floor, and this light shaft allows light to go through all the way down to the pre-K floor. At this level, with the reaching, we also have 16 windows. This is a section through the addition. The existing building is located here. You see it's floor level, higher, 4 feet higher to accommodate this floor. And this pre-K has grade access, which is required. And this is the light shaft that I need to a skylight on the top, and that lets you have natural light penetrating to the first floor. This is an isometric of the addition. So the existing kitchen is here, the existing gym is here. You see the expansion of the additional gym, and this cafeteria space we shop. We have some married stairs that connect it to the raging room, and this is a range plus the house. This is a perspective of the entrance to the addition, so that the drop-off for the pre-K would be here. This is the entrance to the addition, and this is the connecting stair. This is the perspective from the side of the addition. The gymnasium addition is located here. We have the stair, the connecting stair, which we illuminate with various size windows to create exciting spaces. And then you see the addition here. We have the pre-K classrooms, which are required to be larger than the regular classrooms, extend beyond. And this is good in that it breaks down the three-story massing of the building. Inside scale down, we have a lot of natural light to the comments. Okay, and with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jonathan Levy, the design for the elementary school. This is working. Okay. And thank you, Chairman Bourgeois, school committee members. It's a pleasure and a privilege to be here with you tonight. It has been these past 3 months that we've been working with these a wonderful community. I'm just very grateful to such wonderful clients. So, what an incredible project this will be for St. Woonsocket. A project that's going to elevate our students, the whole community. And the way we think about it is right from the way we live education. It's to love and to wonder, and make a building that helps children to put in that state of mind where they're not being asked to succumb to somebody else's agenda, but where they're eager to be a part of the school environment, where they can't wait to be there every day, and where they don't want to leave every day. So that's the kind of school that we've tried to build, and one of the rules is trouble to make with this possible initiatives. We want to go beyond the expected for Woonsocket. We want Woonsocket to have the best school, in the state and throughout the country. We want you to meet the challenge of the future, which means that we have to think about not what your needs are today, but we have to anticipate what the needs will be for the coming decades. And then finally, we make this place a better community through its students and opportunities that they are doing, because they've been in such a wonderful educational environment. So we've been working with Dr. Gee and his relevant staff since November. It's done a lot of hard work. We started by imagining what it would really be like to be a student, one person, in a school, pre-K through 4, there's 1,200 students large, and how difficult that must be for a young child. So the key to that is breaking down the school into several schools within the school, very much like the way it is today. We have 3 elementary schools that are contributing to this new unified elementary school. How can we simulate the experience of community that they already have today in their small learning environments? So that has been our theme the entire way, which is how to break down this large population, which we know, by the way, let's not forget. By combining those schools, we will have not only the ability to reduce capital costs. For example, if you were to contemplate replacing all 3 of those schools individually, how expensive would that be? Not only do we have the ability of reducing the overall life cycle costs, as Brad alluded to earlier, imagine how much savings there would be having one building to operate, having it larger than separate for 3 separate buildings. But imagine the increased resources that these students will have, because they're in a larger building, access to a larger gymnasium, access to all kinds of special education resources that you just can't possibly provide at every location. So there are many advantages to this unified school, and we want to take advantage of those while at the same time trying to mitigate the disadvantage of them being in the community. So we started by thinking about how to make 3 schools within a school, and what you're looking at, and I'm sorry to say that it's so far away, and this text is so small you can't really understand it, but what you're looking at are 3 different proposals for how to break down a school into 3 different communities. And I feel we chose this one, which is, well, we have 3 schools within a school, and these schools will consist of an early education center, and grades 1 through 2, grades 1 through 2, and grades 3 through 4. So that makes a school a separate school. It's not just the students within it identifying with one another. We have to give physical cues to make a home for them that they know is distinctive from the other places within that school. So separate administration, so that every child can be recognized by their name. Separate signage, separate location, separate resources, and really make it seem like these are separate places where the students can find a home in a small group among their small group of peers and faculty. Then we took that 3 schools within a school idea, and we bridged it into architectural possibilities. How we can give expression to those. And you can see a variety of building studies that we looked at. One, for example, which had essentially 3 wings with a ceiling, each one with a different characteristic. Another which had 3 segments of a wing. Another one which had 3 segments of a twisty, curvy building. And then finally one which has 3 wings which branch out from the central space. So one of the curves that we were throwing is that Dr. McGee said, well, listen, We're going to have 3 schools in this school, but let's also make sure that the entire school has a way of coming together, has a way of being unified. So wouldn't it be wonderful if we had the idea of those communities branching out from one shared place? That's the way that we thought we would proceed, and that's exactly what we would proceed. So, to give you a sense of where we are today, this is the site plan. And the site, as you may know, is Berry Field, which is a very prominent site in the cityscape of Woonsocket. Everyone encounters it when they come into town. It's a very large site. So the concept here is that 17 or so acres would be dedicated to the school, with the potential that another, what was it, 6 acres? Yeah, almost 6 acres could be available for commercial development. Or not, we don't know. We just simply made sure, we just provided that for that potential. So, let's see how it works. Okay, let's talk about this school. So, we oriented the school so there would be access directly from Smith Street Road. We have the entrance here, here, which is 3 lanes wide, which would allow a left turn lane so that people could get out on the right turn without having to interfere with the left turn lane. Then you come in here, there's the curved boulevard that ultimately aligns and access with the entrance to the school. There's abundant parking for teachers, and also parking for parents who want to walk their pre-kindergarten and kindergarten students into the school. There's also what is called herringbone or chevron bus parking, which would, during the school day, be converted to play space, hardscapes play space. Services around the back of the building. There's a lot of room for field space. That's the full-size soccer field that we see in the back here. We haven't gone into any depth, and we have to understand this is a phase 2 small, stage 2 syndrome. So what that means is we're trying to get the broad outlines to the extent that we can get very firm understanding of cost, and so that I can understand how I'm meeting educational challenges. There's a lot to go, a lot to do yet in the next stages of work. A lot of detail, landscaping design, designing interiors, fine-tuning, coming back, reviewing our assumptions. So there's a lot that we're happy to do. This is a perspective view of the second floor. We're going to start at the second floor, which shows how these 3 lanes come together, which you can see here in the cafeteria, which is a space which is used for 3 seatings during the day for the cafeteria, and can also be used for assembly for the stage, which is here. To the side are the sub-communities that I described earlier. The communities are arranged by grade. So this is the grades 1 and 2 grade on 2 floors, grade level 2 and level 3. I'm going to come to level 1 in just a minute. Level 2 and level 3. And then on this side, on level 2 and level 3 are grades 3 and 4. 8 classrooms per floor per wing for those. So that's a total of 800 students in each one of these educational subcommunities. The entrances here is separate administration for the first and second graders, and for the third and fourth graders, so that when they come in the front door, they peel off to the left or to the right. They're greeted by the administrative staff that is associated with that part of the school. On the first floor level, so this is like, I'm sure there's a number of these around Woonsocket, split level houses where you kind of enter in the middle and you can go down or you can go up. So the idea of this school is that you can go up to the first and fourth grade level, or you can go down as you enter to get to pre-kindergarten and kindergarten. But don't be confused. That is not a basement. It's fully above grade. And those classrooms actually will have doors that allow them direct access to grade and to the outdoors on the first floor level. So here you can see the pre-kindergarten room, kindergarten room. They have their own administration, and in the middle of it is a curiosity center, much like the older kids have a media center and a library on the upper floors. That's the third floor. And here's a detail of those administration areas with the open welcome center with its counter, security vestibules, place for the assistant principal who will be in charge, in this instance, of the grades 1 and 2 cohort. There will be a principal's office for the entire school, which is here, with its own waiting room and secretarial space. There will be 2 nurses' suites in the school, one on the second floor level and one on the first floor level. And then on the right is the first floor level administration area, which is similar to the one above. There's a lot of specialty spaces that I'm not going to be describing today. Social psychs, interventionists, math and reading assistants, accounted for with a variety of different small group and breakout space and learning areas that are coupled throughout the plan. Plus, importantly, places for special education. There's one dedicated special education full-size classroom per floor per unit. Also, OTPT. At the back of the plan, this is another way of looking at the plan, which is mobile. I assume you'll have access to these so we can sign them. At the back is the gymnasium. It's a 6,300 square foot gymnasium. It's 4 teaching stations. There are 2 auxiliary teaching stations and there's 1-story areas, which are for other kinds of health alternatives. Training. There's a large kitchen and custodial service room off to the northwest. This is the media center on the northeast side. There's a lot of glass facing into the cafeteria. You go on the third floor level, over the servering and over the media center, the specialized 21st century spaces like the Da Vinci rooms, Unified Archive, and we also have OPPT location. This is a view of the school from the front, with the 35th grade wing on the right, first and second on the left. A detail of the entrance with those 2 administration areas, almost like open welcome rooms, welcoming the students to come in, a lot of glass, and there can be reciprocity views back and forth between the administrators who are welcoming the students and the students who are entering. Overlooking it all is the clear-story glazing of the cafeteria. We'll have abundant light, south light. This is south-facing, so abundant south-facing light come into that cafeteria without the expense of skylights. This is a cross-sectional view. If I take a saw and cut through the classroom rooms, you can see the pre-kindergarten or kindergarten classrooms below the first and fourth grade classrooms, the hallway in between. Well, one of the things that I neglected to mention just a moment ago is the arrangement of each one of those classroom rooms features learning commons, 2 learning commons per floor per room. That's a place where collaborative learning, project-based learning will occur in the midst of the actual classrooms themselves, which will have a lot of glazing. So each group of 4 classrooms is clustered around its own collaborative learning space, or what we call learning commons. This is a cross-section through the middle of the school, from the gymnasium through the cafeteria and out through the front door. A view of the interior of the cafeteria, which, like the room that we're in, will have exposed structure, acoustic decking, like the decking that we have here. That's the stage in front of us. These are balconies overlooking the cafeteria that have the art. The Da Vinci spaces, the media center off to one side, the serving off to the other. So with that, I'm just going to do a little video tour. Here we are flying in like a seagull towards the front of the building. You can see the two wings I described just a minute ago. In the middle of it is the drop-off parking for the pre-kindergarten and kindergarten kids. We'll see around now to the east. There's the media center and some of the specialized classrooms I mentioned earlier overlooking this wonderful wide open space. Gymnasium having direct access to athletic areas have great. Now going into the front door. See the pre-K drop-off area, going to the front door, security vestibule, into the lobby, through the glass, into the cafeteria. And looking back towards the entrance, the stairs connecting the first and second grade floors, down the first and second grade corridor. These are the large amounts of glass harvested in the south light for the cafeteria, and then starting around the first and second grade quarters. So that concludes our tour. We're very excited about this. This is the product of Dr. McGee's staff and Dr. McGee, their hard work together with us. They inspired us. And I think we have a wonderful product that we can carry forward to the next phase. So I'd love to take your questions if you have them. Because of the three. That's right. Okay. Well, I'm detecting a partisan. That's what I was going to say. Yeah, something like green. I'll remember that the next time. So. Cool. Okay. Well, thank you all for your patience and for your attention. One's on the way up. Making sure the lights.
She's making it so she's moving.
She said she was running faster. A couple hours. I'm going to go to P3 stage 1 and
Sorry, the ramps are steep. Already.
Does any school committee member have any questions, comments for our professionals that are here?
it's going to be beautiful.
Can't wait to work with you.
It's incredible. What was that? Half an hour review and look at look what it took to get to that. It was fantastic. Phenomenal job by everyone.
I have one question that may be with a hot button issue, but when we look at that, where is that placed in terms of where the fields are?
Right now, all we are discussing is the submission for stage 2. The building committee has not voted on the location. We have approved stage 2, which is really to go and get the money, as I recall. And location has not been finalized. What's going to be on that location has not been discussed whatsoever.
I just wanted to ask because it was referred to the Fairfield School.
It's we have been referred to that, but that has not been voted by the building committee. And that, once we get into stage 3, that's when we'll be looking at locations at some. Okay. Mr. Perry, are you going to say something?
You covered it, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Dr. McGee, roll call.
Chairman Bourget,
Yes.
Vice Chair Burke.
Yes.
Mrs. Kepiscus.
Yes.
Mrs. Costa.
Absolutely.
Yes.
We got us to school. Congratulations. I think the Shamrock is a good idea, Vice Chair Burke, because it may certify that we get the money. And then sure we get the money. If we get all the heaven and earth and the saints working for us and ride, we got a shot.
Be a part of group.
All right. Excellent. Who's this meeting? Next, I'll make a motion. Our next item is a discussion and approval of the P3 Stage 1 submission. Do I have a second? Second. Second by Mr. Leclerc and Mrs. Costa. Dr. McGee, Mr. Perrier.
I'll take that one, Mr. Chairman. Probably during the November building committee meeting that we had, RIDE expressed interest in potentially funding a joint partnership construction between the Woonsocket Education Department and Rise Mayoral Academy. It was floated out there, and I volunteered to be the main point of contact for the discussions on the subject. RIDE put us into contact with a group, city builders, and they have had some experience in constructing both public and charter school partnerships. So I've met with both them and the Rise Mayoral Academy superintendent probably about 4 times over the last couple of months to discuss potentially what could this partnership look like. And where we're at right now is really early in the exploratory phase of how a partnership would look like between the Woonsocket Education Department and Rise Mayoral Prep. The first thing that we're really working on is what piece of land could accommodate such a partnership. So the city is currently issuing an RFP to solicit some potential sites that maybe something like this could happen on. And again, what would the end product be? It would be there'd be a split. There wouldn't be a power sharing situation going on. What we would potentially and probably be looking at are basically 2 separate buildings on the same piece of property next to each other. One controlled by Rise Prep entirely, and one school controlled by the Woonsocket Education Department. Again, these are very early discussions and always subject to change, but we felt that there was a need for another school for the Woonsocket Education Department, so that's why we are submitting a Stage 1 application. Now, you just approved the Stage 2 application, which is much more in-depth and is an actual request for money. The Stage 1, as Dr. McGee mentioned earlier, is really just an expression of need from the school department. And I do believe that we have a true need for another elementary school, even with that new beautiful elementary school potentially being built. So there's really nothing else for you to look at because, again, there haven't been any major decisions made. We are just really at the point of assessing need and both coming out, Rise Prep and the Woonsocket Education Department submitting a Stage 1 application that expresses that need for new buildings. So I don't really have much more to offer because, again, the Stage 1 is very preliminary. But if you have any questions, I would certainly want to answer them.
Let me just see if I understand what's to happen under P3. Rise has already had an approval for a new high school, from what I understand. And they, according to the chairman of the board, the Rise High School is going to occur. If we so choose, to work with this, quote, partnership, the city builders will build us an elementary school. So we have a choice. We either approve P3, or we don't. If we don't, that means we're out. We lose the school. Whereas the high school will be built, the point is, right now, they don't even have a location. But it seems to me that if we don't do this, we would lose a school where we're only going to have to pay 6%. Because again, 94% of that school would be basically rebated, if you would. Is that correct?
Yes, that's a correct assessment, Mr. Chairman.
Now, Dr. McGee, you want to add something to that?
Sure, I'd love to. So, as Mr. Perrier said, this is a stage one only. We would, if the committee approves a stage one, we would start the exploration of this partnership. Personally, I think that it is an opportunity that we should take advantage of because there's going to be a Rise Prep High School. There is. Since it's going to happen, if we can get an almost free elementary school out of this, 6%, it's almost free. It's close. I think it's an opportunity we shouldn't pass up because we can provide another brand new elementary school for the students in Woonsocket. Now, I'm very curious as to where that location may be because it's my understanding that just because we agree to a stage one doesn't necessarily mean it goes beyond a stage one. I mean, again, my question would be, where would this go in the city?
And that's what the RFP was issued for, was to really get a feel for what sites could potentially house this project. So again, the stage one is not a full commitment. If we move on and you approve stage one, and when we come back, we'll have to come back for a stage two approval, and you'll have much more idea as far as the design will go, as you saw with the presentation with stage two. If the committee is not happy with where it is on stage two, you simply vote it down at that point, and we walk away from the deal. So by approving a stage one tonight, I don't want anybody to think that we're 100% locked in, because that is certainly not the case. You don't have enough to really approve or approve anything because you don't know the location, you don't know the design. Again, the stage one is just a admission of need, and that is what the submission is based on.
Comments, questions?
Chair,
Mrs. Kapiskas, please.
I have a couple. The first is, you're indicating the word stage one, we can opt out. Can they opt us out?
And
Can they say, no, we're no longer doing that with the WED?
honestly, the stage one has already been submitted to their board over there and approved. So I believe they've already done their side of the approval process for the stage one, and the RISE board has indicated they do want to move forward. I'm not 100% sure on that. I'm 90% sure, but an agreement needs to be had between both schools. You're absolutely right, Ms. Kapiskas. So I would say that, yes, maybe potentially down the road something like that could happen, where maybe, much like if we weren't comfortable, if they weren't comfortable, they would have the option to do that as well. I would agree with that.
That uncertainty makes me a little uncomfortable. My second question has to do with the redheaded stepsister of the administration building. That hasn't been discussed in any of these plans, and we still sit with McPhee, which is 100% non-UDA compliant. Is the plan to use, are you able to use any of these funds to resolve that issue?
I think
preliminarily, and again, not to speak too much out of school here, I think if these plans go through and we do vacate some of these older school buildings, I think one idea that the district has had is to maybe potentially move Adam McPhee into an old school building, create an office from there, and then potentially have the facilities there, sort of like maybe moving to Vernon. Again, just to give an example, we can move our administrative offices there. The facilities department is already there, so we would have an ADA accessible administration building at that point. So there have been some discussions on how we're going to address that.
Could I add to that, Mr. Chairman? So Mrs. Kapiskas, we've been meeting with RIDE regularly for the last month or two. And initially, that was in the plan. However, RIDE indicated to us that the funding has to be used for them to approve the funding. That funding has to be used directly on students. And with an administration building, that isn't directly going to students. So unfortunately, they would not permit us to include an administration building or a small facilities department.
Thank you.
Brett, you mentioned 6% is what this would cost us. Is that same rule apply to the RISE prep? No, the reimbursement is different from ours. And I'm not sure what the reimbursement is, but I can assure you it is not at that rate that what we're getting. I think we're talking in the 40 to 50% range.
45%, but they had said at the meeting at RIDE.
What was that?
45%.
40 to 50%.
You're right in the ballpark.
All right. Yeah, but if we don't do that, if we don't approve this, do they still get that reimbursement rate, or is that passed? No, that reimbursement rate has no bearing on what we're doing. It's kind of looked at as a joint project, but the funding is going to be separate and apart from both of them. And to kind of follow up on RISE potentially walking away down the road, I would think they'd have to start all over again from stage one. I don't think if we move forward with a joint stage one and continue down the road and either one backs out, I think RIDE would send both of us back to the starting line to start the process again. That's just kind of my educated guess, working through this process a few times already as a director of finance. But again, this is kind of a new thing, so I'm not really sure which way RIDE could potentially break, but I do hear your concerns, and I think they're legitimate. Do you know what the timeline is for this? We're going to continue on. Potentially, the next stage 2 submission time frame is in September, so that would be the earliest that we would move forward with a stage 2, like you saw this evening, where we have a presentation. There's a September, February submission dates for stage 2 applications, so that would be the earliest you would see it. And as we meet with the building committee, I will also keep the building committee apprised of the developments with P3 as they come up. I think that's going to be the best way to keep the information flowing on this. And if any major decisions need to be made, they'll go to the building committee, and then the building committee will approve and then move up here to school committee. And that goes for location, for anything that I would deem a major decision. The school committee will get to weigh in on. Thank you.
Anyone else? Dr. McGee?
Chairman Bourget?
Yes.
Vice Chair Burke? No. Mrs. Kapiskas?
No.
Mrs. Costa?
Yes.
Mr. Leclerc?
Yes.
Last item on I think it's the last item. It is. On our agenda is a discussion and approval for high-performance green status goals. So I'll make the motion to discuss and approve this. Do we have a second? Second. Second by Mrs. Costa. Dr. McGee, Mr. Perrier?
I'll take that one too, Mr. Chairman. This is the green status goals. This was approved in our last stage 2 submission back in 2007. It really has to do with some high-level operational energy savings and sustainable design features that are in school, that we're going to be following these guidelines in the design of our new school. Pull up here. There's several areas to that. I'm sorry, I lost the course.
I can't either.
I can't hear you.
We just throw it up. The link doesn't work.
The link doesn't work.
The link doesn't work.
It tells us page not found.
Right.
Oh, that's interesting. So basically what you have is, there's several components to this. One is the idling policy that the district has already passed, that we won't leave buses legally or idling for more than 3 minutes in the parking lot. We have the CFC and the HCFC HVAC procedures that we won't be using the chlorofluorocarbons and the hydrofluorocarbons and the new HVAC systems. That we'll be purchasing Energy Star compliant appliances, so that we'll be able to get the energy savings out of that. Additionally, that we'll have a school maintenance plan for our new building that will assure that the building will be well kept and maintained after the construction is completed. And then finally, the last one is the Tools for Schools, which is the indoor air quality assessment, which will ensure that the students that the air quality is correct in the building, and that the HVAC systems installed will be sure to be in compliance with that. So again, this is all some high-level approvals here. This was approved in the 2005 Stage 2 application, and again, it's just kind of a reissue of those approvals back in 2007.
Any discussion? Do you think we need to see the attachments before we vote? Do we need to table this, or are we good to go?
Sounds all right to me.
Dr. McGee?
Chairman Bourget?
Yes.
Vice Chair Burke?
Yes.
Mrs. Kapiskas?
Yes.
Mrs. Costa?
Yes.
Mr. Leclerc?
Yes. No other items on our agenda, so I'll make a motion to adjourn the meeting at 8:42 p.m. Do we have a second? Second by Mrs. Costa. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Adjourned.